And the book itself has quite a bit of a story in your case with the IRS. When you sued them, and then after it wasn't heard by the Supreme Court. The book has a central role in this as well.
Well, it does. So the Supreme Court didn't hear my case. And when we got to that point in the process, I filed returns. I started paying the income tax. And, you know, I wasn't surprised when the IRS decided to audit me. First, they called my book an abusive tax shelter. And they wanted to investigate me based on an abusive tax shelter. And I said, come on. In order to have an abusive tax shelter, I got to be a bar licensed attorney or licensed CPA, and I got to be investing money for other people. I just wrote a book, and I sell it for $20, and people are reading it. So then they backed off from that, but then they audited me, and through this audit, which was an audit of 8 years of my returns, they summoned the names of everybody who bought my book. They wanted names, addresses, and phone numbers, and I refused to turn those over. And I was very lucky. The Center for Individual Rights, a public interest law firm in Washington, D.C., defended me, and we actually filed 2 lawsuits against the IRS to quash the summons. We really went through this twice, and the whole litigation took 2 years, and we prevailed on that. And so once we prevailed on that, then we got back into the mode of going through the audit, and I participated in a number of interviews with the IRS and turned over to them about 3 to 3.5 bankers' boxes full of documents and canceled checks, etc. And so they really examined my whole life. They knew everything about me. It was really kind of amazing how much they did know. And when that audit was over, they took away all my business deductions for 8 years, ran my so-called taxable income up to the stratosphere, and then put liens on me based on that elevated amount of income, and I'm still trying to deal with that today.
So because you didn't release the names, they denied your business deductions, thus inflating your taxable income and the bill that you finally owe them.
That's true. And really, my tax issue has morphed. It's no longer a tax issue, it's really a First Amendment issue, because I'm filing returns, I'm taking deductions like other taxpayers take, I'm paying the tax, and if I could be treated like any other taxpayer, I'd have this thing wrapped up years ago. But what has happened is I'm fighting a First Amendment issue, because just like a journalist wants to protect his sources, I want to protect the people who have read my book. I don't want them involved in any extra level of scrutiny by the IRS, any extra level of investigation that they wouldn't have as just normal citizens. And so I protected my readers. The IRS didn't like it. They denied all my business deductions for 8 years, and it really has made it almost impossible for me to get this chapter of my life behind me, which I very much like to do.
So most people have a cursory knowledge of this situation, and what they hear in the papers is you have so many liens up against you and you haven't paid your taxes. Answer that question.
Well, that was one of the things that took me about 20 to 30 hours of my time to respond to. What I did is I collected all my financial documents. I got them to a CPA, and I had a CPA here in Post Falls verify that since I did not get my case heard from the United States Supreme Court, I have paid over $120,000 in both state and federal income tax. And it took me about 3 weeks to collect that information, have him review it, get him more information that he was asking for, and get that out. And I really didn't get that out until there's probably dozens of articles written about how I was refusing and not paying income taxes. But finally, once I had that documentation and could actually verify what was really going on, I haven't heard a lot in the media about what I have paid.
And that's on your site. You have several documents outlining proof that you pay taxes.
Yeah, I have that letter from the CPA on my site. I also have a letter from another CPA where he reviewed the 8 years worth of tax returns that the IRS audited, and he did verify that, yes, in fact, Phil Hart did lose all his business deductions over that 8-year period. And then he goes on in that letter to say that it's impossible for someone to be in business and not have any sort of expenses that would otherwise be deductible.
And you run an engineering firm. So there are definitely another engineering firm would know exactly the types of costs that you have.
Right, and the IRS has tables for what are reasonable deductions for different types of businesses. And the CPA that reviewed my 8 years worth of audited returns, he made the point that your business deductions are reasonable for the kind of work you're doing, and the IRS could have left you with some reasonable amount of deductions, but instead they took them all away and left you with zero.
Did you ever think this would become a First Amendment issue?
No, I didn't. I did expect to be audited, but I did not expect to have this First Amendment battle that I fought. And I'm a little disappointed in the media for not really looking at this First Amendment issue, but instead focusing on the mega liens that I have on me that are based on this IRS audit where I lost all my deductions.
So tell us about the liens. That's something that a few journalists have really stuck to, but they're not reporting it 100% accurate. They've been reporting the liens as much more than they are and just misrepresenting them in general.
Well, the media does know that I have had this audit history. They know what the problems were with the audit. I've communicated that to them, and now I've released this document from the CPA that verified all that. But it's not very sensational to report the truth of the matter. They would rather look at these big lien numbers and report that. And probably at this point in time, when I finally do settle with the IRS, I probably owe about 10% of what's being reported as what I'm behind in federal, and I probably don't owe the state anything at all. And the state has piled on with the IRS and has wanted me to pay income taxes on all those denied deductions. And I think once they realize that they're going to have to recognize those deductions, I doubt if I'm going to owe them any money at all.
And that's where it stands right now. You're waiting for them to recognize deductions.
Well, we're at the very beginning of litigating that issue. So whether I'm going to have to go through a multi-year process or maybe we'll settle quickly, I don't know.
And it seems like it never ends. So the ethics committee has decided you're working on all these things. Some of the ethics panel has cleared you on those issues, and then there's more.
Well, what's happened is I hired a CPA. He verified I've paid $120,000 in income taxes in the last 5 years. Since my judicial remedy ended, I've been filing and paying. We also have this other CPA who's verified that I did in fact lose all my business deductions for 8 years, and that's made it very difficult for me to wrap this thing up. Now we had the ethics panel who are holding on to one issue that I'm on rock solid ground on, but on the other issue they've cleared me, and that was from having the conflict. So now another issue's come up that they can create a frenzy over, and that is unpaid employment taxes. And the picture that's being painted is that I withheld taxes out of my employee's paycheck and somehow spent that money on other things without turning it over to the government. And that's a big no-no to do that. But the reality is what the lien is on the business for not paying employment taxes is that's money that I paid myself. And in 2004, now we're talking 6 years ago, the IRS recategorized me from being an engineer in business for himself to being an employee of my own business, and then said that I should have been taking employment taxes out of myself for those monies I paid myself several years ago. That's what the employment tax issue is about. The media spinning it into something totally different than what the reality is.